At the same time, a sensation in Moscow, Trump's special envoy Steve Whitkoff held a meeting with Putin just 48 hours before the ultimatum expired. Exclusive details coming up in just a minute. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry is calling what's happening a turning point in the war. So, is a meeting between Putin and Zelensky possible? And will Trump himself be there? Could the end of the war really be closer than anyone expected? All the answers are in our report. Don't miss it!
The Kremlin will make concessions to Trump to avoid secondary sanctions, Bloomberg reports. The agency, citing sources, wrote that the Kremlin is considering several options for concessions to U.S. President Donald Trump regarding his attempts to put an end to Russia's full-scale aggression against Ukraine. A source for the publication states that one possible proposal could be a suspension of airstrikes using drones and missiles as a gesture of de-escalation, provided that Ukraine also signs the agreement.
Putin is indeed afraid of a confrontation with the United States, a serious confrontation, because in any case it would negatively affect the Russian Federation's economy. Plus, it could also seriously damage economic relations, primarily economic, but also others, with countries that depend on the United States. This could include Brazil, for example, or even India, which is currently actively supporting the Russian Federation, not to mention Turkey and other countries. I mean, those who use Russian energy resources.
Supposedly, even though the world and Russia are preparing for war, the Ministry of Defense of the occupying country has decided to recreate the Soviet small air defense ring around Moscow. According to journalist estimates, over the past 2 years, the Russian military has built more than 50 positions for anti-aircraft missile systems in the Moscow region. According to satellite images, about 15 of them were built in the summer of 2025. Mainly, they are installing Panzer S-1 air defense systems there. According to Reuters, Russian general staff officers promised President Vladimir Putin that Ukraine's defenses along the front line would collapse within the next 2 to 3 months. Sources for the publication claim that Putin believes in his army's victory and pays no attention to Trump and his statements about ending the war.
This means they will push forward now, throwing everything they have into the fight, especially since there are only a couple of days left until Trump's ultimatum expires. When he said 10 days, that was 50 days ago. The 50 days ended on September 2nd, and the 10 days, they basically end the day after tomorrow. So we will certainly see. Naturally, right before the crucial 10-day deadline is set to expire, Vladimir Putin will now undoubtedly start making significant gestures toward Donald Trump, emphatically stating that they are no longer actively shelling, that they are indeed ready for a genuine and lasting peace, and so on and so forth. But this will only be done to buy time. And Trump understands perfectly well, in fact, that the Russians have no intention of making peace. They have a goal they want to achieve, a military objective. And here's the question: will Trump pretend that he believes Putin?
On the night of August 6th, Ukraine attacked the Rostov region and, for the second night in a row, struck the Tatsinskaya railway station. A fire broke out there again. Local authorities report an alleged grass fire near a residential building from which 3 families were evacuated. The Russian leadership aims to form 10 new divisions by the end of the year, said Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrsky. According to Syrsky, 2 divisions have already been created, so Ukraine will be forced to continue mobilization and strengthen its army.
Most likely, these are precisely the people who were mobilized this year through recruitment in the Russian Federation. CNN has talked about this, and so has Bild. This has also been discussed by the Institute for the Study of War. So it's not much of a secret how many people the Russians have managed to mobilize.
Support from our partners, which continues without interruption, is also important for our country. The U.S. State Department has approved a potential sale to Ukraine of services for repair, maintenance, and logistics for M777 howitzers. The total value of the package is $203.5 million. This and other aid packages help Ukrainians hold the front, where the Russians continue their offensive. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reports that the enemy is currently conducting offensive operations to the northeast of Pokrovsk, attempting to cut off the logistics of Ukrainian troops, but has not achieved any success.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
This is the informational component of hybrid warfare. The goal is to show that, look, they are already in Pokrovsk. The situation there is not very good. There are about 15 kilometers between the northern and southern Russian groups, and Pokrovsk is already surrounded from three sides. And basically, if this encirclement, let's say, keeps tightening and the distance drops below 10 kilometers, then according to all military rules, regulations, and military science, the troops need to be withdrawn.
Another area where Russia has not had any success for a year is its own territories in the Kursk and Belgorod regions. With their special operation, the Ukrainians have taken this war to a new level and proven that they are capable of fighting for their independence by any means necessary.
The marriage dance of Russia and China. That's how the joint naval exercises between the two countries have been dubbed. Artillery firing and anti-submarine operations. The countries have come together as one. Is something serious brewing? The dictators are covertly measuring their strength. This can no longer be hidden. Beijing and Moscow smile at each other face to face. But behind each other's backs, they're preparing something interesting. What exactly? Could China really push deep into Russia and take back what it claims as its own? Don't miss out on all the important details in the following comprehensive report.
Russia and China held another round of joint three-day exercises from August 3rd to 5th. This time they took place in the Sea of Japan, with several ships, aircraft, and combat missions. Everything was done on a full scale. And all this is happening against the backdrop of the ongoing war in Ukraine and Moscow's international isolation.
These particular exercises cannot truly demonstrate anything of significant value to anyone at all, and they are not genuinely needed for any practical purpose whatsoever, except perhaps as a kind of elaborate mating dance. Large males come out facing each other, stand tall, show off their huge fangs and teeth, display how powerful their wings are, and generally try to intimidate one another in every possible way. They might even shout, click, cackle, or roar, but during this kind of display, these mating dances, it almost never comes to an actual fight because there's no point.
The exercise program includes rescue operations for submarines, joint countermeasures against underwater threats, as well as air and missile defense.
There's nothing new about them. I still remember working on the ORT channel 25 years ago when we were showing these Russian-Chinese exercises. They were held, I think, every year and sometimes even several times a year, depending on the international situation and whether there was a need to perform a mating dance for someone else so that, the planet would be favorable to one performer or another.
Beijing emphasized that these maneuvers are intended to promote the deepening of the comprehensive strategic partnership. But is China really interested in a partnership with Russia?
We also need to work on the relationship between Russia and China. Russians and Chinese do not like each other. I don't know if you know this, but the Chinese have already changed their maps of the Far East, adding Chinese names to Russian cities, because I think they're making it clear that one day they want to reclaim these territories.
China and Russia have been conducting joint naval exercises since 2012. But since the start of the full-scale war, they have intensified their military cooperation.
An alliance is something between equal partners. Today, China and Russia are not equal partners. Today, Russia is in a vassal, absolutely dependent position with respect to China. Especially when India drops out of Russia's oil trade, only China will be left. So what are we talking about? What kind of alliance could there be? There can't be any alliance there. Putin's Russia is an apprentice to Xi Jinping, and whatever Xi Jinping says, that's what they will do.
Nevertheless, China remains neutral on the issue of the war against Ukraine, although you wouldn't say so based on their actions.
China acts pragmatically in all situations, and for example, when developing economic cooperation with America, they don't worry about what, say, Putin and his circle might think about it. They go ahead and develop it without any concern. When they have the opportunity to strengthen their political influence and as a result their economy by interacting with some shady characters, global outcasts like the Kims or the Putins, they do that as well, because that's part of their policy.
Joint military actions by two nuclear powers are not just a signal, but also a potential threat. After all, such exercises can be used as a cover, or not.
China will never go for a militaristic confrontation with America, because America is one of China's largest trading partners. China is dependent on America just as America is economically dependent on China. Because if some kind of conflict suddenly breaks out between them, then accordingly China would lose about a quarter of its economy, a quarter of its income most likely. So in general, there's no need to look for some big hidden threat to Ukraine or to the civilized world in these exercises. That's simply not the case.
Meanwhile, the EU is concerned about China's growing role in supporting Russia's war against Ukraine, as a result of which they intend to push for sanctions against Beijing as well.